Like me and Ren, negative ones. What's up? I was just making fun of. I was just making fun of yours and I's charisma. I said we have negative one modifiers. We have negative one modifiers. Ren over here, or Reid over here has +3. Uh,
Big facts. Big
big
facts.
facts. we both know it's true. Welcome everyone to Next to Nothing, the show where we talk about how to waste your time and not your money in gaming. I am your host, Danny K. With me, as always, I have my co-host, Ren.
Hi, I'm Ren. I'm bad at games and stuff. What's up? What's happening?
And with us this week, very special guest, ReidActually of the Sneak Attack podcast and his own Twitch stream. How's it going, Reid?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, thanks for being here, dude.
Yeah.
We should be thanking you profusely. So real quick at the top of the podcast, go on ahead and plug all of the things that you do. Tell people what you do,
Sure.
and all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it already. I am the host and game master of the Sneak Attack podcast. That is an actual play Dungeons and Dragons podcast. We recently pivoted to more of like a custom 5e inspired sci-fi game system. But yeah, we have 170 some odd episodes over the span of almost 4 years of tabletop RPG content to peruse from. We're pretty proud of it. And then me personally, I have a Twitch stream that I engage with my community on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So you can find me at ReidActually and all the things,
Right on.
So real quick, and I'm gonna get a Sneak Attack link out there real quick. But if you are watching the show either in VOD on Twitch or watching it live, there should be a ReidActually link for his Twitch. And right about now, there is a link to go and see Spotify to go see Sneak Attack on Spotify.
Yeah.
So go check those out. If you are listening on the VOD or watching on YouTube, all of that will be down below in the description of the show. So yeah, let's just get into it.
Sure.
Let me do my best. Let me just do my best, Philip DeFranco, and let's just jump into it.
Jump right in.
Just jump right in. So you said you're doing kind of a 5e homebrew, I guess I think that's the D&D lingo, homebrew.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the game system itself is what I would call 5e heavily inspired. So I take like the bones of 5e, existing 5e, because I love it very much, and then I built my sci-fi rule system on top of that. So all the basic D&D 5e rules and mechanics and order of operations, all that's still there, and then I just add my sci-fi flair on top of that.
Yeah, which if we're to do kind of a for fans of listing on this, it's kind of Star Wars-y, little Mass Effect-y.
Oh yeah. Huge Mass Effect fan, so there's definitely a lot of that influence.
Yeah, so it's a role-playing game kind of set in your own homemade, homebrewed Mass Effect type world with all the nice, funky flavors that you wanted to bring into it. Like, I want to say, am I remembering correctly? There's a lot of Kansas City Chiefs puns.
There may be a unhealthy amount of Kansas City Chief references. Yes, I'm a self-confessed Chief super fan. I am unapologetic about it, and this is before last season. All you haters out there. So yeah, I'm a huge Chiefs fan, and just the ability to inject these subtle references to Chiefs lore or fandom and stuff like that has been really cool. I guarantee you, no one in the world knows all the references I've put in there already, but there's at least a dozen, and people just go with it. It's just but the fact that it's not so in your face is you're like, wait a minute, are you trolling us right now? It's a little more subtle than that, so I'm glad that I can slip them in almost unnoticed.
Does that go unnoticed among your players as well?
For the most part, the most blatant one is the fact that I called the whole galaxy the Arrowhead Galaxy. That was That was a pretty big nod, and yeah, so they picked up on that one right away. But
Mhm,
there's a couple in there that I think even my fellow sports fan players would like have not picked
mhm.
up on yet.
Just kind of a quick self plug here. We have had one of your players on the show, Joshua Lormer, who plays Lucky
Yeah.
in Volume 2 and Greg Stronghammer in Volume 1. So if you guys are Sneak Attack fans, you can go on ahead back on our podcast feed and find that. That was a really fun conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
Josh is a great dude, and he's so good about. He's way better at I am at like reaching out to the community and actually like trying to form these ties. So
mhm,
I appreciate his zeal and making sure that he gets as plugged in as possible with other shows. It's really fun.
yeah. So I had some questions that I've been curious about with this transition to Volume 2, and
Mhm.
when I do D&D, I do a lot of homebrew stuff as well, and I so kind of going from experience, just like I said, I had some questions because homebrewing, and I'm not sure if you would agree with this, is a great way to basically taking the bones of 5e and not necessarily wanting to do fantasy all the time. I know a lot of people want to
Yeah,
do some other, you know, obviously you didn't want to do fantasy for a volume two. Um, but it's a way to kind of get your kicks without having to buy a whole bunch of books. Uh,
yeah,
for like for buy a whole bunch of books so you could do a Call of Cthulhu game or
right.
I'm sorry, a Cthulhu Mythos game where you maybe can homebrew that into a 5e system, or there's a bunch of others that work that way.
Hmm.
So when you first looked at this, wanting to do like a sci-fi adventure, what was the most intimidating part of this process for you?
Definitely just the amount of work that I knew I had in front of me.
Hmm.
I as I started, my intention very early on was I'm gonna keep most everything intact. I'll do a few like custom races, so my
Hmm.
players can play custom homebrew races. It won't be like dwarves in space. It'll be something else that I call them, but that'll more or less be the dwarves.
Mhm.
And with all that came new classes because I decided very early on in the process as well that there's not going to be any real heavy magic influence. It's going to be mostly technology, and so kind of stripping all that down and going, okay, what's left? Just the rule system. Great. So I can build on that. But then as I was like making the first couple classes, the first couple races, and I'm forming these little branching threads. And along the way, I'm saying to myself, okay, I make this one thing, but this thing spawns 5 different things. And I make this one thing and it spawns its own 5. And now I've got, you know, 10, 15, 25 different things that all need explaining or at least circling back to justify their existence. And
Hmm.
so it became so much more of a rather than just like, I'll just make a couple new races and classes and shove it out the door. It became, well, wait a minute, what about like how do you heal yourself in space? How do you
Hmm.
get around in space? Is there like ship combat? Do I need to account for that? Every single race has its own home system, which is a solar system with its own planets and moons and stars and atmospheric conditions and biology and ecosystem. And like all of a sudden my head is going, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And so I think just very early on, I'm realizing that it was way more work than I had anticipated. But at the same time, I was still super jazzed about it.
Hmm.
When I would sit down to write, I wouldn't get like super overwhelmed or like feel the weight of it. I was actually excited to solve these problems. So that's how I knew I was at least on the right path.
Mhm.
But just for the most daunting thing, definitely just the thought of like, how do I how do I mimic in some regards mimic or at least live up to the standard that a professional team of people with a whole slew of full-time resources put together, once every 10 years. Like
Yeah.
how do I create something that at least feels like it lives up to that standard in 6 months?
Yeah, because I was actually, as you were explaining it, you talked about just there the amount of people that work at Wizards of the Coast,
Mhm.
and so much of the settings. I mean, that's over more than 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Since first edition, I mean really like some of those settings have existed.
Yeah, and I mean that's several authors as
Hmm.
well. You know, the Drist novels and um, all the Eberron and Grey
Yeah,
Hawk and what's the Forgotten Realms. Like those are all like at least 2 dozen plus, or not sorry, um, 2 decades plus of authors and
yeah.
game designers on that. So
Hmm.
as you were saying it, I was kind of thinking about that, and you're right. That is really daunting to try to come up with something that matches up to a Forgotten Realms or a Spelljammer.
Yeah, it's it and I think about halfway through, about 3 months in, I started realizing like, I mean, like, would it have been such a big deal to like go the Spelljammer route or the Starfinder route or any of these other pre-existing sci-fi tabletop RPG game systems? And I think I just kept going back to this like nagging voice in the back of my head of like how much I disliked playing Pathfinder.
Hmm.
And it was really just for me because of how rules heavy everything was. There was so much, I would say, context for everything. Like when it comes to just a simple attack, like you would in fifth edition, it's just I do an attack, does it match or meet his AC? That's the success. But there's all these other qualifiers in Pathfinder. Like I still don't know what being flat footed is. No idea. I still don't know what flat footed is, but it changes your AC or it changes your effectiveness of your attack. And it's just like a million different things like that. And I remember
Hmm.
in my when I first got my Pathfinder character sheet, I was just like so overwhelmed with all the different things and all the numbers that didn't tie into each other. They were just like an independent variable that affected one or two small things. And I was just
Hmm.
like, man, this is just so much for me. And so rather than try and like relearn a new system and homebrew everything and kind of take it from there, I just kind of wanted to like I wanted to make sure that the gameplay side of this volume 2 endeavor remained intact and my players fell in love with fifth edition the same way I did. So it was a pretty easy choice to kind of stay in that realm, but just difficult. It was all the work was front loaded because of it. So
Hmm.
it's just like now that we've got we're releasing episode 13 this week, and now that we're like in the swing of things, I feel like things have really like leveled themselves out in terms of uh like weekly planning or just difficulty of making the episodes.
Hmm.
But like all the work was front loaded and it was kind of insane.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned, as you're kind of going through this, removing and adding things. What was the for sure thing when you're looking at making this system that you wanted to axe? Like, what has been like that one piece of 5e that always has just driven you mad that you're like,
Oh,
no?
that's a good question. I know there's something because uh well, besides like all magic, and that's not inherently a 5e thing, but like um oh, I think the big thing that always kind of threw me off was the grappling mechanic.
Mm.
In terms of like, I know how you engage in a grapple, but the fact that grappling doesn't mean you can't fight each other, you're just like hugging and punching. I'm just like that whole concept just never made a lot of sense to me. And so I
Hmm.
I, I remember Josh asked me because of course he's the big melee brawler kind of guy. He just wants to get in and fight people. And so I remember he and I talked about it. I said, yeah, like I don't know what grappling is going to be necessarily, but it's going to be simpler. It's probably just going
Hmm.
to be you are trying to either break free or restrain, and that's all you can do because it seems silly that you have your full complement of actions while you're engaged in this like very Greco-Roman style brawl.
Yeah. The only thing I think about grappling when it comes to 5e, or at least how I think about it, is it's kind of like judo, where basically you are limited to just throwing a punch. Like
Yeah.
you can have somebody here, and as someone who wrestled a little bit, I
Mm,
can understand where some of that like melee combat would come in, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna grab you by like the nape of your neck, and I'm gonna like hold on to you. I'm gonna grab your hand, and then like maybe I can throw you, or maybe I can throw a kick or something like that. But that's about the extent. Like I can't like swing a sword while I'm grappling.
sure.
But
Ooh,
maybe I
ooh.
could knife, but that's about it.
I remembered one. Spell save DCs.
Mm.
So that goes back to the whole magic thing. And like spell save DCs are specifically, for those of you who don't know, are specifically your ability to innately defend yourself against magical attacks.
Hmm.
So if someone tries to do like a magical attack that affects your mind, uh sometimes like your spell save DC It's just your character's ability to mentally block that intrusion kind of thing. That's kind of like the flavorful way of looking at it.
Hmm.
Again, because magic doesn't exist really in the same realm that it does in 5e. I converted it and called it a character DC, and
Mhm.
so now it's just one number that is affected by one other number, your proficiency modifier, and that dictates your character's ability to just like succeed or fail at a number of different things. So it can be actual attacks um or like abilities to roll out of the way or like dodge something. So like it's a much like the proficiency bonus in 5e. It's just a set number that defines a lot of different things, which I think is a super elegant way of handling the complex math that can often pop up in D&D.
Mhm.
Yeah, because and that's one of those things where I'm a fairly basic DM, and I have a lot of new players.
Yeah,
Usually, I was the guy that got stuck being the DM for all my friends.
same.
So sometimes
Same.
like the complex numbers, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Sometimes you just wanna say, "You know what? Screw all that. Let's just, like, have fun with whatever is fun for us right now, and just,
Mhm,
Mhm.
like, let the math be the math, and we're not gonna think about it."
yeah. Um, and with like a lot of that stuff, like when you're making like these changes, like the character DC, and changing spells, how much of that was you, and how much of that was like a process with your players and doing like play testing? How much like how much tweaking and stuff did the other players have? Because it seems like everything kind of melds well together on the show.
Well, I appreciate that because sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but I appreciate that. No, the podcast is the playtest, really. So,
Mhm.
Okay.
uh, it's a very public, very terrifying type of playtest where everyone in the world has the option of seeing like the good, the bad, and the ugly with this thing.
Hmm.
Which is great because like already a couple times I've had people tweet me and say like, "Hey, how does this work? I heard you say this like in regards to like how something in the game works. So how does this work?" And I'll be like, "You know what? I haven't thought of that. That's a really great point." So I'm already getting like these public kind of interactions that are help navigating this. But the players I gave so much agency to very early on. I have like a living document all for a lot of things for volume 2. One is just like the campaign itself, which is private. That's just for me. And then I have the handbook. I'm calling it just the handbook for now.
Mhm.
And that is shared out to a couple people who can kind of see what it is I'm working on, kind of the mechanics and the very loose structure for how things like certain systems work with other systems.
Hmm.
Ability scores versus like how does that translate to combat, for example. Um, and so I have people like Mike and Josh who can jump in and kind of give me that 10,000-foot view because I have to be so in the weeds on it. And they can give me that view and just be like, "Hey, have you considered this? Does this make sense?" And then for the like the characters themselves, the classes and everything like that, I get I get inspired by my players every single time we play. Every single recording, they're saying something or doing something that is prompting me to go, "Oh, that's really cool. I need to jot this down," and then add it into like the official publication, like whenever that comes out. So,
Hmm.
it's nothing is off limits. Nothing is like sacred. If I've already completely rewritten like how Kelsey's class works in the game,
Hmm.
Mhm.
we've scrapped entire elements of her engineer class and added an entirely brand new element that's just unique to her subclass. And so it's really like just being able to play it and see kind of like the fun thing for me is like to be at the table and to see like I can tell when a player is enjoying themselves versus when they kind of feel like they're not contributing that much. And so that sparks a dialogue with me and says, "Hey, what can we do to get you more involved?" And
Hmm.
so just that back and forth with my players who are the most intimately familiar with the game system right now, it's been super invaluable. So yeah, it's tons of influence and tons of open conversations that prompt really the goal of making the best thing we can.
Yeah. Which you kind of led me great into another question I had here. What has been like the least favorite or like the most frustrating things for your players?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think very early on, like the first couple episodes, it was really understanding what you can and can't do. Um,
Mm.
and it's I don't know like how many like first time or kind of newbies to D&D there are out there, but uh it's very difficult, especially someone like me who came from like all I've done is played in video games. That's
Mhm.
my involvement in like RPGs. And so the first time I ever played D&D, I was like, well, what can I do? What are my limits? Because that's I think a gamer's like that you jump into a game for the first time. You want to test the system. You want to know what your boundaries are, what your move set is, like what can you do and not do. And
Mhm.
in a game like D&D that just doesn't exist. Like
Mm-hmm.
a good DM I think will take whatever it is that you want to do and craft a narrative or craft uh some type of element that will help they'll feed into your player's desire to do that thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so but, so it I was so struggling very early on as a player to just know what those limits were.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time, like, several months worth of playing and under a really good DM to kind of understand, like, okay, I need to get my own, like, misconceptions of what's possible in Dungeons& and Dragons. I need to get that out. And then so it was it was very difficult. Like, okay, let's make a podcast for D&D, and like Kelsey was a brand new player, and Mike and Danny hadn't played in years, and so they were all kind of in the same boat as we were all kind of figuring this out together. What's possible, what's not possible, and like what can we do? And once we got past that, everything went super great. But now
Mhm.
with Volume 2, we've just like restarted that, and which is funny because that is the last thing I expected. Like I expected our
Mm-hmm.
like our energy and like our table vibe to kind of just like stay intact, and we would just like almost pick up where we left off, but that wasn't the case.
Mhm.
And specifically, in an episode that has not been released yet, I think you guys will hear it in 3 weeks. Um, I'm kind of beating my head against the table going like, "What are you guys doing?" I was like, "You know this is more or less D&D, right?" And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "If you have a question about something in the world, go ask somebody." It's like I'm not like it's a little different than go find a tavern and ask a bartender, but more or less go find a tavern and ask a bartender. Like, and they're like, wait a minute, we can do that. I was like, it's D&D. Just play the game. I was getting so mad,
Oh,
and
man.
so it's really funny that like everything is. I tried to keep everything so similar to fifth edition, but still invariably they're just like, no, we almost need a hard reset again, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to teach them some tough love of like this is how you play the game. If you don't remember, this is how you do it.
Yeah, go to your local space Casey's and ask for directions.
That's it. Like it's
uh,
the names may be different, but the themes and like what you need to do are they're more or less identical.
mhm. By the way, Casey's for those who don't hail from the Midwest, like Reid and I, is a gas station in which you can get a slice of pizza.
It is it's more than that, but yes, that's the heart of it.
um, so yeah, that's funny that just because just a different setting with some slightly different
Yeah,
rules that
that's all
you
it took, and they were just like, "Wait, how do I do this again?
yeah.
Come on, guys."
And do you think that's because this it's a space setting more than the rule changes, or do you think it's more the rule changes?
I think it's a little bit of both.
A little
Honestly,
bit
I
of both.
think because the it's so much easier. Like if you needed to get from point A to point B in fifth edition, like in a traditional high fantasy setting, you're thinking, gotta rent horses, gotta to get a boat. Who knows how long this is gonna take? Like
Mhm.
I can only go like what 50 miles per day on horseback or something like that. It's something
Yeah.
stupid. But you can cross more or less half a galaxy like that in my game. And so just this concept of traveling places means nothing all of a sudden. And so
Yeah.
it completely flips that whole mechanic on its ear of like we're far away from something. How do we get there? Or like, what do we do in order to prepare for going there? Well, really nothing. Like I tried to make travel as small of a thing as possible in this game,
Mhm.
and just that whole mentality of like things are the same but they're different. I think it just puts them in a little bit of like an uneasy state of knowing, in their mind of like what's possible versus what do we need to work for.
Mhm.
So let's same thing with like the internet. You know what I mean? Like the internet exists in my world. I call it the outer net, but it's more or less the same thing.
Mhm.
And like, so people I think are just now realizing if they don't know information or if they're needing to look something up, they can use the internet. That is a tool. That is a resource at your disposal. And I am the internet. The game master is the internet. And
Mhm.
so I think they're like, well, we have all this information at our disposal. We can go anywhere we want. but what do we do with that? And I think that's their challenge is they're figuring out what it means to be these new classes and these new characters all along the way. They're trying to define for the world, really, anyone who's listening, what this new game system is and what's possible. So they're feeling the weight of, am I playing the game right?
Hmm.
And I think they are. I don't think there's a wrong way to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think they're in their head the same way I was when I first started playing of, am I doing it right? Am I going too far? Is this possible? And I just want to say yes to everything. There's no shut door. Any path is available to you. You just let me know, and I will facilitate that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a hard problem, and I can imagine that only gets harder for the more you layer on and the more you add,
Yeah.
which uh, I don't think I have any ideas on
It's
improve that, and it's
it's not an impossible problem, I don't think.
mm-hmm,
And I do believe it's one of those problems that will work itself out just the more we're in it,
mm-hmm,
the more comfortable we feel in the space with this rule system and just kind of understanding like what is possible uh versus what is not really. And I feel like they'll eventually get it out of their head of like, we're not playing a different game system, just the names might be different, but more or less this
mm-hmm,
is the same thing. So I think we did have like a little tough love moment, like specifically that last episode I was referring to, of like, I think they're starting to figure it out. Like, I don't have to be so codependent on they don't have to be so codependent on me in order
mm-hmm,
to achieve their goals. Like, they can declare themselves, I want to do this, and set out in the world or set out into space and go find and facilitate their ability to do that. And I'm just like, yes, I'm on board. Let's go. And
mm-hmm,
and I hope that when they have that moment of realize, oh, I can really define how the story goes instead of just like wait for Reid to give me a prompt, then
Hmm.
I think that's when like the magic will kick in. It took us a
mm-hmm.
little bit in volume 1 as well, but we got there, and I'm not worried yet. Yet.
Yeah, yeah. Give it a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Um, so like the last question I had planned for you
Mhm.
is we've done the high fantasy, we've done the sci-fi. What other settings would you like to homebrew for?
Yeah.
And what mechanics would you implement to make those changes?
Oh, man.
Or what mechanics would you strip to implement those changes?
Yeah. I was inspired by something Danny, one of our players, said. When I we asked this question at like a one of our live stream Q&As, or it was maybe it was even just like a table discussion or something like that. But the question got tossed around Danny, if he had to run a game, what would it be?
Mm-hmm.
And Danny said he wanted to run a one shot set in like a 19th century mining town, like an old west style mining town. And I
Mm-hmm.
just got like super attached to that setting of like this like Red Dead Redemption, old west kind of turn of the century style 6 shooter type of game. And I'm just like, I'm really on board with this. Like, I think this is such a cool idea. And so if I had to like pivot entirely, a whole new game system, whole new thing, I think I would probably do 5e Western, but I would bring back fantasy races.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my one kicker. So like dwarves would be there and orcs and elves, they would all, but it would be like a old west swinging door saloon with fantasy races and 6 shooters.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
That's what I would do. And then I would make the classes like sheriff and blacksmith, and just like very like trade type jobs, like almost
Hmm.
like occupations. And but I'd keep the traditional 5e like fantasy races and stuff. Just do a
Mm-hmm.
whole new classes.
Yeah. Just because we've talked about this game before. I played it with my family over Christmas. There's a game called Deadwood 1886
Ooh, I like
that
I like Deadwood the show.
that's what it was called, right? Ren,
I
correct me.
believe so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was called Deadwood.
Yeah, so this is actually a fun like little tabletop game you guys could like play when you're not playing D&D. You know, you guys are having a um Deadwood 1876.
Okay.
So the whole thing is that you all have a character and you're there like robbing and stealing, and you have these dice that correspond to weapons. So every card has like a weapon on it, and every card has like a action on it. So you can either do the action or you can use the weapon in a shootout to like try to kick somebody out of a building.
Hmm.
And like basically you go through like 3 rounds trying to collect gold and trying to be in the building that has the most gold, because if you're in the building that has the most gold at the end of these 3 rounds, you're in the final shootout, and whoever wins that wins the game. But it was really fun,
Yeah.
and it might be something you guys would probably enjoy. I
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it when I played it with my family, and I wasn't expecting to.
I it's funny because I'm the type of person who would like I'm not gonna like abandon space or like this volume 2. I'm not gonna abandon that anytime soon.
Yeah.
If we do a volume 3, I don't even know that I would do a Western theme thing. Um,
Hmm.
but if yeah, I just like I got latched onto this Western idea, this Western motif. And so then I immediately like it happened right around the time I got my PS4. So then I started playing like Red Dead Redemption 2. And I just
Mhm.
like kept reinforcing this idea of like I really love this setting so much. And then
Uh-huh.
I watched the Ballad of Buster Scruggs and like Unforgiven on Netflix. I'm just like, I really want to do this all of a sudden. Like I had to pump the brakes. I was like,
Hmm.
you can't plan the next thing until you like finish or at least get like halfway through the first thing.
Yeah, yeah. I run into that problem all the time where I write a lot of one shots for
Mhm.
my, just because a lot of times that's all I can really get people to commit for is one
Yeah.
shots.
Yep.
And so I'll be like halfway through some sort of Salem witchy kind of setting, and then I'm like, but I really want to do some sort of mind delving uh eldritch horror
Yeah.
or uh political intrigue debutante ball. Something like that.
Like Murder on the Orient Express kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys wait? Did you guys have a couple of mystery episodes like that in volume one?
Oh, we tried, but they were so bad at it that like the murderer got away. It was like a total letdown. Yeah.
uh, so yeah, that's all the questions I really had for you on this like homebrew thing. Is there anything that like you really wanted to get off your chest, or Ren, if you have any questions for him? I guess I should.
Well, my issue is that I don't really have any experience in D&D or anything like that. So when you're saying like one of the big things that new players try to do is they try to press their bounds, I
Mhm.
distinctly remember because somebody tried to get me to play D&D and they gave me like zero guidance whatsoever, and I was like, but what
That
do
can be
I
tough.
do?
Yeah, that can be tough.
But I don't know, it's always sounded intriguing. It's always sounded like a great time. And honestly, both like the space one and honestly, I'd love to be a sheriff. Dude, that sounds hilarious. I'd be so
Yeah.
down for it. But yeah. That I don't
I,
really have any questions to
what
say,
I tell
but
people all the time is if you like video games, if you enjoy novels, like even just any type of creative input, like
mhm,
there's like a 9 out of 10 chance you're gonna get hooked in D&D. If you can just like
yeah.
take the time with someone who actually gives a crap about their players and like doesn't set them up for failure, like just to be able to like ease them along and really help them discover the joy of interactive storytelling, like collaborative
Mhm,
storytelling. There's nothing else like it in the world. Literally, there is nothing else that compares to a group of friends sitting around crafting a story together and not just like being hand fed something that
right.
anyone else could have done.
Yeah.
It's there's just some magic there, and that Gary Gygax and company, like, they figured out very early on and have just been really, like, refining and honing it for the last 40 years.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Need to get into
Yeah.
it. That's all I have to say.
I agree.
Well, we'll get you in on a one shot here soon, Ren.
Sounds good.
Um, so yeah, anything that we didn't touch on, Reed, that you wanted to add?
Oh, I if you do play D&D as a player, uh, do your DM a favor, say thank you. Let them know that you appreciate their work. Offer to DM for them one session. Just plan a one shot yourself and say, "Hey, let me take the reins for one session just to give you a break." They would greatly appreciate it.
Mhm.
It can even be a pre-made one. You don't feel the urge to write your own right away because that can be super daunting and overwhelming. Don't be
Yeah.
an idiot like me. I did that. It was stupid.
Same.
Yeah, it was dumb. There's really great resources out there for first time DMs like the people who get paid a lot of money to put together modules. I don't know why you wouldn't listen to them, but I didn't.
Mhm.
But just listen to them and go out and get their books or download the PDFs. They're super cheap,
Yeah.
and go ahead and have yourself a little pre-made one-shot adventure and inject as much character and flair and story into it as you feel comfortable. But really, just go out there and have fun. That's the big thing, and your DM will thank you for it.
Mhm. You just reminded me of a quick question that I wanted to ask you, because you guys have done stuff officially was with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah,
You guys have done the Mordenkainen's
yeah.
and
We did
Tomb of Annihilation.
Tomb of Annihilation and Tome of Foes. Yeah.
Out of all the modules on D&D 5e currently,
hmm
which one do you suggest new players or new DMs look at to start with?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Because those books aren't cheap, and it's
No,
like, do I want to do Tomb of Annihilation or Horde of the Dragon Queen or this or that?
Horde of the Dragon Queen is great because it's so long and comprehensive. Horde of the Dragon Queen is a 3-book saga that intends like the scope of the story is you start out as a level 1 character and you work your way up to being a god more or less who defeats literally the queen of all dragons. And so like that is a enormous book. It could take people years to go through and that's if they play regularly. And so there's so much content there. If you're just looking for something that'll take you from 1 to 100 given to you on a plate, very little. I don't want to say very little planning because there is like every DM has the plan, but
Mhm.
Mhm.
it's very simple just to get in and be like given all the resources to succeed. Whereas something like uh, Minds of Fandelver is a very short module. It doesn't take, it won't last for very long. I think you get from like level 1 to 7, I think, by the end of it. And that's a great test to see do these people even want to play D&D? That's a great starter as well. Tales of the Yawning Portal is also really good. That's kind of a lesser known one, but it's a bunch of smaller stories all in one book. So like, similar to Fandelver, it's their condensed little, not one shots, but little mini adventures that you can pick and choose from. If like you find one that seems like it's more up your alley than another one, you can just play that one and you don't have to worry about all this extra stuff. Um, I would avoid Tomb of Annihilation as your first go. It's so exhaustive, and it's really fun because it was co-written by Pendleton Ward, who's the creator of Adventure Time.
Mhm.
So like it's got a ton of humor in it and just
Mhm.
really unique flair, which I love about it. But it's also super hard. Like it's not an adventure for new players. It will kick your butt sideways, and it's really challenging, especially when you actually like get into the tomb and you could literally die as soon as you walk in if you don't play it right. And like adventure over. Hope you had fun.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's so that can be brutal, but it's they're I would say Horde of the Dragon Queen is great. Fandelver, Tales of the Yawning Portal, and even like Mordenkainen's is fun too because there's a lot of content. It's not an adventure more or less, but there's a lot of stuff in there that you can build from.
Mhm. Yeah. So for anyone who is curious about getting into D&D, just like a real quick aside, the core things that you the two core things that you really need to start would be the Dungeon Master's Guide
hmm
and the Player's Handbook. Those are the two books that you absolutely need. I would say, arguably, the Monster Manual if you plan on being a DM yourself,
Yeah,
but you can get away without it. You can
yeah,
find custom stat blocks online and some basic stat blocks for some stuff. But that Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide are the two things you absolutely need,
yeah,
especially if you want to be a DM. And then yeah, if you guys want to start a pre-built thing, you can check out some of the things that Reid mentioned there. So yeah, we spent a good chunk of time here on D&D, which is great. I love talking about D&D. Um, and but I think it's time for us to kind of move on here. We talked a little bit last week about Elder Scrolls Blades and the monetization
Mhm.
policy
Yeah.
or practices, the business model that they started. Um, Over the last week, I got a new phone, and I decided I was going to pick up Elder Scrolls Blades on this, just to see how good or bad the policies or the business model is for it.
Mm-hmm.
So Elder Scrolls Blades, basically, the gameplay loop is go to dungeon, kill things, loot, go back to town, build town, rinse and repeat.
Right.
So, combat is super simplistic. You know, come across a monster or some sort of creature, you hold, wait for the thing to light up the correct color, or to basically light up the way you want it to, not correct color, I guess, but then you release, attack done. um so really simple, you know, you just make sure you don't miss. They said hold and release, hold and release. You have some different abilities that will like use stamina or magicka,
Mm-hmm.
or mana, whatever you want to call it for Elder Scrolls. So you can do like a shield bash, like an ability is a shield bash. One is like an overhead strike. Uh, some other abilities that'll use up some stats. Um, so far, the two things I've seen that are lacking, you can't really be a pure caster. Like you can like cast fireball, and there's some different spells and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
you can't be a ranger of any sort. Like there's no bow option or crossbow option that I've seen, which is really strange because there's like there's the in every Elder Scrolls game there's
The wood elf archer, the
the
stealth archer
yeah,
assassin.
the stealth archer, the assassin, the thief.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was part of it. I'm like, oh, interesting. There's no bow option. I haven't picked, and I'm at level 10 or 11. So I'm like, if there's no bow at level 10 or 11, I'm assuming there's just no bow in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels fair. Does that feel fair?
Yeah, I mean that seems like a reasonable assumption. That seems pretty far into a video game.
Which I mean, arguably isn't that far. I don't know how many hours I've played of it. I'm guessing probably right around 3 hours or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I can't see a bow. There's no like just pure caster option. Like I said, you can have like an option to cast spells that almost seem like almost like a timed passive ability that you like hit it. I guess it's not timed passive. It's like a timed active ability, like some sort of
Oh,
cooldown.
like on cooldown, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where you like hit it and then like you have to wait for like 30 seconds and try not to get hit to cast fireball. Because fireball will get interrupted after, or if you get hit within like a certain amount of time. So it's like you
Mm-hmm.
either shield up or you know, get lucky and don't get hit for the whatever amount of time it is to actually cast it. So that's kind of like the basic gameplay loop. Like I said, you kind of go through the dungeon, you loot, you grab chests, you grab items and gold and whatever else through it. Each dungeon has like a specific kill 5 of this enemy, find these townspeople, get through the dungeon, like make your way all the way through the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, you're rewarded with a chest, some gold and XP, and then you go back to town. And then because the whole idea of the game is that you are, for those who aren't super into Elder Scrolls lore, you are a member of the Blades, which if you remember in Skyrim are like this secret shadowy organization who fought against the Aldmeri Dominion but also killed dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And so this game takes place in the Elder Scrolls timeline at the point in time called the White Gold Concordat, I believe, where the Aldmeri Dominion and the Imperials decided to stop going to war and formed an alliance, which is actually a big thing in the Skyrim Civil War story arc.
Yeah.
And so
Just
you're like, yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Oblivion start like aren't isn't the king being escorted by the Blades? Is that the group, or is that not the group?
Um,
possibly it's either the Blades or the Companions, and I don't remember which.
Okay. I always thought that there was some tie to Oblivion as well, like where Patrick Stewart
Mm,
gets killed, like that whole
yeah,
sequence.
the most of my my Elder Scrolls knowledge comes from Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Online.
Okay.
I haven't gotten to play Oblivion or Morrowind.
mm-hmm.
And part of that, is just the fear that I'm like, if I buy Oblivion or Morrowind, is it going to be compatible on Windows 10? Because I've seen even recent games from Bethesda, like
Right.
Fallout 3, not be compatible with Windows 10. Even when running it in compatible mode and like getting different mods, it just always crashes on me. So yeah, you're a blade. You're like a member of the Blades, and you end the war. So you go back to your hometown, and you find it's destroyed. So it's now your goal to rebuild your hometown. I named mine Honey Pastures, which anyone who's played D&D with me will know that's like usually what I name the starting town in all my homebrew campaigns. um, uh, so yeah, so you go through, you loot, and you start building up your town. Like you start out with like a smithy, and then you got to make some houses, and then you can make an alchemy lab. And all like this building takes time, as well as opening chests, which is where the problem that we talked about last week actually kind of starts to rear its ugly head. So chests are rewards for going through stuff, completing quests. You find them in the dungeons themselves. And the problem comes that chests take actual time to open. A wooden chest takes 5 seconds to open. The next level up is a silver chest. That takes 1 hour to open. The next one up, the gold, takes 6 hours to open. Or you can spend some precious gems on it, which you get gems by completing quests or, as
Real
it
world
doesn't want,
currency.
real world currency. And they said like in a tweak, I saw like a patch note real quick. They fixed silver chest from being 3 hours to 1 hour, and you can only open one chest at a time. So you could be like stocked up on all sorts of wooden chests after a dungeon. You know, maybe 2 or 3 wooden chests, and maybe you claim a free one here or whatever else. But you're opening up a silver chest. You're either spending money or you're waiting on that silver chest to get done so you can open up all these 5-second piddly little wooden chests.
Yeah. Can you not like choose which ones that you want to open first?
You can open, yeah, you get to choose, but you can only do
Okay.
one at a time.
Right.
And is this like a thing where you can't do anything else while this is going on, or like can you go and peace out and then come back later and it's open?
You can peace out, or you can go and like do another dungeon. It's not like a stamina bar where like you're limited to dungeon runs based on this. But you can be halted. I could feasibly see you being halted in progress by this. Because you get like lumber and limestone and copper, all these things that you would use to build your town, to build like a smithy or upgrade a smithy, anything like that. You can like be kind of halted by that, and like, or you could just get lucky and find those things in a dungeon. It just feels really weird. The first off, like the scaling feels really weird to me. You go from 5 seconds to an hour.
Yeah, that seems very, very long, especially for a game where you're talking about like it does basically sound in most cases kind of like an idle game. You're not really doing a whole lot. Like even when you're like trying to cast a spell, you're kind of just chilling. It's like
Yeah,
okay.
like the combat can be kind of active. Like you have to pay attention to the combat. You have to hold and release to launch your attack, and then you have a shield or a block option to block incoming attacks. So like the combat itself isn't really idle. And that's why I'm like, okay, well, at least you're not limited to these dungeon runs. The like I said, the problem is like you can only do one at a time, which feels just really weird. Like at least give 2. And then the scaling. And then because you go from 5 seconds to 1 hour, from 1 hour to 6 hours.
Right. Yeah.
Which does not feel quite right. Like at 3 hours. So
How much is this game?
This is free.
Okay.
This is a free mobile game. So yeah, like the scaling feels kind of weird. The amount that it takes to open up the chest itself, if you want to just insta open, it seems okay-ish. I'd rather not be there, and then for me, I'd almost rather pay 99 cents for the game, but whatever.
Yeah, like what happened to this mentality where like are people with mobile games just unwilling to pay actual money for the game? Or like if someone like a Bethesda, a AAA developer, if they
Yeah.
actually just like said, "Hey, we're dumping all this time into this game and this energy, and it's an actual Elder Scrolls experience, but it's $5," would people say no?
I think.
I agree, to be completely honest, because I feel like so many people, like, yeah, you easily catch a lot of people because it's a free title, but
Mhm.
it's always frustrating. Like,
Yeah.
99% of the time, it's just a frustrating experience.
and and that's how, like, especially because mobile is such a large market, you can easily hit 100 million people, or at least
Hmm.
get it in front of their eyes. I mean, and there's not even 100 million of any consoles out right now, and so
Right.
like it's an insane user interactivity curve. But when someone downloads this free version of Elder Scrolls and they get super frustrated that it's just a wait and see game for after 30 minutes or something, all you're doing is tainting your brand. Because
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
now all this that's the association people have in their head when they think of the brand Elder Scrolls or even Bethesda as a whole. Like, I'm just very confused of why they would possibly think that was a good thing rather than a super polished, unrestricted kind of experience where you can do what you want when you want to for
Hmm.
$5. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
even that's a Wendy's. That's a Wendy's
Yeah.
meal, like,
Yeah.
that's
No, I
easy.
completely agree.
That's a slice of pizza and a soda at Casey's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I distinctly remember a long, long time ago. I actually looked it up because I could not remember for the life of me. I brought it up multiple times of one of the actual good, in my opinion, good like mobile games, and it was Super Brothers
Mhm.
Sword and Sorcery, where you did throw down like $5, but it was like a straight up like actually decent like story and like real like it seemed like a polished game that just so
Yeah.
happened to be a mobile game. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is good. I'm really impressed with this. During that time when it came out, it was just like everything was idle. It was all
And
idle garbage, and it was just like it's not fun. It's literally just something to waste time on, and I
uh,
hate that personally.
I mean, and it's not like there isn't a precedent for like the opposite model working, right? For the pay up front model being successful. Didn't
Right.
Nintendo sell like a bajillion copies of Super Mario Run?
I believe
Yeah.
they
And
sold a
that
lot.
was $10. And I know people right away were like, "Whoa, boy, $10 for a mobile game, easy." And
Yeah.
they sold millions of copies.
I wonder. I wonder if it's more of what Sure, it'll still be successful, but what's going to make even more money exponentially down the road?
Oh, yeah.
Because these games and these models always rely on whales.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the people who are willing to spend a lot of money, or
Yeah.
frankly don't have the willpower not to spend that money,
Yeah.
which is another problem. What I will say that this does that other mobile games, or what this doesn't do that other mobile games do, is this doesn't push the store to buy more gems right in front of your face,
Mhm.
or like at the most inconvenient times trying to get you to accidentally click on something. It doesn't seem it hasn't shown to be that scuzzy yet, like what a lot of mobile games will do. That, or a lot of other free mobile games, especially the really 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 shady ones, will take the phone number of your device
Mm.
from the information and sell it to telemarketers. So
Mhm.
if you just like downloaded like a new like Bubble Witch or something like that, and all of a sudden you're getting way more phone calls, that's probably what happened to you.
Mhm.
I don't even know how that's legal.
Yeah.
I don't even think it is, but that's what I think the problem is. A lot of these developers aren't in the United States, so what recourse do you really have?
Right.
Um, Reply All did an episode recently on that, which maybe I'll link down below for that episode if I can find it. Um, but yeah, so the model, I wonder if it's just because one model is just definitely more successful than the other, and
Yeah.
not necessarily um, that one isn't successful at all.
Mhm.
Um,
No, I'm sure like that the idle game makes them money. I mean, like no one would do them if it didn't make anybody money. But
mhm.
Right.
again, I think it seems crazy to me. Obviously, I don't have shareholders and a staff of 400 people globally that relies on me for an income, but like it's really hard for me to justify like I know for a fact I'm going to taint the image of this product or this brand,
Right.
but
Mhm.
I'm okay with that sacrifice because it will net X amount of money. It's just like,
Yeah.
to me, it's not even like a question. It's like, no, I'm going to do what's best for the long term health of my brand. But it's just
Yeah.
it's not the reality, and it's really kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Bethesda, as we've kind of seen in the recent few months or year or so, really have struggled with keeping like that brand
Yeah.
untarnished. I
Mhm.
mean, we could say they really shit the bed with Fallout.
That'd be putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's this doesn't feel like such a big misstep as we initially thought to me. Like I said, because it's not pushing like the store right in front of your face where you're accidentally going to
Hmm.
click on something and
Mhm.
then you know authorize, especially if you have like a fingerprint ID kind of thing, where you're going to authorize some sort of purchase on accident. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily preying on the Skinner box as for people who don't know the Skinner box, it's the famous experiment where like a rat would go to a box and press a
Hmm.
button and get food. Um, it doesn't feel like a Skinner box where you're constantly pushing things just to get more things.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, like a loot box system. That's basically what that is. Um, there's not a bunch of stuff like that. What feels, I guess, weird, I will say, is that on every part of or every loading screen in this game, it
Hmm.
says this is an early access game,
Hmm.
which I agree when we said last week
Yeah.
in the article that we read, that it's not an early access game, and I fully agree with that. This is not an early access game. This game, like, there's not missing features. It doesn't like I'm not going through this and being like, this building is not available until or in the future. No, like
Right.
everything to play seems to be here. Like there's nothing missing, it seems. It's not it's not being like archery range coming
Yeah.
soon. Yeah, there's nothing like that, and I can pay money on it.
The Grand Theft Auto 3 approach, where like you can cross the bridge once
Yeah,
you've gotten farther in the story.
yeah, yeah. There's nothing like that that makes this feel like it's unfinished and
Hmm.
therefore an early access game. Uh, heck, I haven't even seen like any real graphical glitches,
Yeah.
which for Bethesda is quite impressive, and for an early access Bethesda game is even more impressive because you would just imagine that if this was some sort of early access game from Bethesda, there'd be like walking robes somewhere with like like there's no glitches like that where something fails to render.
That
Hmm.
was my
Uh,
experience playing the beta of Elder Scrolls Online. I was perpetually trapped in that hell space, like where you have to break out of jail in hell,
oh yeah.
and I was just perpetually trapped there. I was like, "This is fun. This is good experience."
They're really nailing the hell simulator.
Yeah, like no, I really feel like I'm in hell.
Oh man.
Molag Ball kept you trapped.
That he did.
You could not be the was it the vestige? The vessel?
I don't know.
I think it's the vest.
I only played the beta, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah. I it seems like we mention it a lot right now, but we I actually thoroughly enjoy Elder Scrolls Online and its current state, at least when I was able to play, but I can't play it anymore because I cannot download information from ZeniMax. Like it's blocked by my ISP. If
This,
it's
oh,
from
this is the
so
future of gaming. It's the future. You don't own anything. I just want to put you will never own
right,
your games again. You merely
yeah,
lease them from the company you gave $60 to.
right,
And whenever
right.
they decide that they want to revoke that access, good luck. That's tough on you.
Yeah, well, and it kind of stinks already because a lot of companies don't release like their server information, so you can't
Mhm,
like recreate servers for games. It's like, yeah, when Dirty Bomb is dead, there's a first person shooter I play a lot of, or I played a lot of,
Hmm.
that they've kind of stopped active development on. They're like, as long as people are playing, we're gonna keep servers up, but um, like you can't like download the server information. Actually, let
Yeah.
me make a stand real quick. Splash damage. I want that server information so I can make servers when y'all eventually let go of Dirty Bomb.
Oh,
So
man.
yeah,
I have seen like game companies in the past. They will do stuff like that. Of like
yeah,
if they're sunsetting servers or moving on from a product, they will actually then release like publicly the data needed to like build your own server, and then you can host it yourself. So maybe that's a
yeah.
possibility.
I want to say like old Quake games did that
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
when they started moving on to different Quake games. You could do that and a couple others. Um, but yeah, like once you buy that $60, Modern Warfare 3, how long are those servers going to be up for? Probably not for much longer.
Yeah.
Um, and that was $60 down the drain. You can play the campaign, but you can't play the multiplayer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is actually a sad state of affairs that uh, that'll eventually start happening to a lot of these big games. Imagine what'll happen to like Overwatch if like Overwatch 2 comes out and they want to do a is Blizzard gonna allow you to make your own Overwatch 1 servers?
I don't know.
Mm,
I think if any company has built up enough positive faith in the community of like extending the life cycle of a game that you would imagine should have died off years ago,
Mm,
it's
mhm.
probably Blizzard. The fact that you can still like play StarCraft 1
yeah.
and like obviously WoW is still a thing, and like I think Blizzard probably has a track record of behaving the opposite of what you would expect,
Yeah.
but it's certainly I think a fear amongst the more, how do I want to put it, less reputable game developers out there.
That's a very PR way of saying
It was
that.
tactical. It was very tactical.
Very tactical. Are you well versed in the arts of public relations, Reid?
Hey, I'm very familiar with saying stupid stuff. So if that's what you mean, yes, I have a whole history of saying stupid things.
It's all right. I'm sure one of these days this podcast will probably cost me a job. Or my stream. I know my stream is probably going to cost me a job opportunity.
Oh, there you go.
um so yeah, do you guys have any other questions or thoughts about Elder Scrolls Blades? It's very meh. I enjoy it just because it's probably the only phone or the only game on my phone, and I haven't had any real problems with it so far.
I don't know. I'm honestly just kind of surprised that they still like they kind of went for more money grubbing. Like I'm okay with a little
Mm,
bit, right? That's okay, whatever.
yeah.
But like going for something that's kind of crucial to gameplay loop is a little like
Mm.
I don't know about that, especially after what a certain game that has a 76 in the title. I'm not naming names, but I'll definitely tell you it's no longer on my computer. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know.
Deadwood 1876.
You got it. Yep. I no longer have that installed. Yeah, no.
Yours was less tactical than mine.
Oh man, but yeah, I don't know. I'm shocked that they weren't like a little bit more hesitant on
Mm.
that instead of just being like, no, we want more money,
Yeah.
more money.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, there's a difference between like the blatant "give us your money" and then the very nice and be like, "Hey, like, want to support the game? This is a way you
Yeah,
can do it," kind of thing. There's a fine line between those things. So yeah, that's kind of all I had on it. That's pick it up if you have a phone that's compatible with it. Try it out. Like I said, it's not going to try to trick you. At least not yet. It's not trying to trick you into buying gems and other stuff. It doesn't try to push you into the store. Um,
maybe that's why it's early
so
access.
Yeah. Those systems aren't built out yet.
in our 1.0 release, we are going to every game starts out on the front page of the store every time you log in.
Oh
The
man.
to exit out of it is a really, 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 really tiny X, and right next to that is a big, 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 big button for gems.
Yeah. What's important is that the X moves around the screen. Nobody ever sees that move coming. So you got to
It's a
try your
mini
best,
game.
really.
It's a feature. It's like playing Duck Hunt.
Oh man.
Oh, we did see some news today. You guys want to talk about this bit of news?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So after some time of um, rumors coming out of the rumor mill over there at
Mhm.
Sony, they announced PS5
They
is in
did.
fact coming.
Would you call it an announcement?
They confirmed. They said.
Yeah.
Just some quick thoughts on this. Any quick thoughts on this at all? I
Um,
know we talked a little bit before the show about like a bunch of AK stuff and um
yeah,
I think
basically, I don't know. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I think it was kind of a silly thing to make a big deal over. If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
it's not. No one didn't think it was coming.
Right.
mhm.
Like it's been 6 years already. They said it's not coming out this year, so that would make it 7 years since the PS4 launched, which is exactly the amount of time between the PS3 and the PS4. Like all the signs are pointing into yes, we're working on something, obviously. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
the only thing they really talked about was ray tracing, solid state drives, and 8K. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like I don't know. This is the whole like we're announcing an announcement that will come in the future at an undetermined date when we will then have another announcement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's a news cycle to generate buzz, which it definitely did. But I don't think there's anything in there that is like unexpected. Like, oh, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I honestly completely agree. I feel like a lot of people probably were like a little bit like, "Oh, 8K," but really who runs 8K ever
Mhm.
at any point?
How
Like
many
Well,
really?
and the PS4 Pro can't even consistently output 4K at 60 hertz.
Exactly.
So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like, are we expected to believe that 4 years later, 3 years later, they'll have an
Yeah.
8K at 60 hertz
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
not for games, like probably
Yeah.
like Blu-rays or Netflix streams or stuff like that. But there's like no way in my mind that the first iteration of this console can do 8K 60 hertz gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
And how
completely
many
agree.
and how many 8K displays are actually on the market right now? And we talked about this on the before, but I don't even think there's that many 8K cameras,
Yeah.
like professional grade cameras that are really on the market. So yeah, you're right. That felt like it's yeah, great.
To
This
be
would be for
to be
TV.
fair, because I don't want to like throw Sony under the bus necessarily because I think they've done a really great job with their console hardware
Mhm.
lately, especially
Yeah.
Mhm.
since like the PS2. I mean, like they've been doing a pretty good job historically. Um, and but they've also like really kind of embraced this trend of being forward facing with technology, like
Mhm.
really thinking out ahead. And
Yeah.
like the PS2 had a built-in DVD player that was unheard of at the time.
Mhm.
The PS3 had a built-in Blu-ray player and that stupid cell processor, which ended up being terrible. But like again, it became very quickly the most popular Blu-ray player of all time. It put a Blu-ray player in every home. And
Mhm.
so like this process of them thinking to themselves, you know what, it's not really a thing yet, but we're laying the groundwork for because they have several arms in entertainment. They've got like 3 or 4 different movie studios. They've
Mhm.
got television production. They manufacture other hardware. Like they've got their hands on all this other different things. So if they can get a system in your house that will tie into other 8K content they're producing elsewhere,
Mhm.
that's going to be a huge win for them because they'll
Yeah.
probably be one of the only distributors pushing 8K video content digitally, like streaming it. And so all of a
Mhm.
sudden, hey, guess what? 25 million of these units already exist in homes across the globe, and like their prime targets for this new 8K content, if they want to call it Sony Plus and charge $7 a month, and
Mhm.
to just watch Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 over and over, then awesome. Uh, but I mean, like that, they strategically it makes total sense, but I think practically it's like totally irrelevant right now.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I feel like it's not nearly it. Like they're trying to really sell it as something that's super like important and
Hmm.
crucial, but really, I honestly could care less. Like I have
Yeah,
a 1080p monitor. I am more than content with that. I know some people are
Mhm.
like 4K, you got to have it, and I'm like, I
yeah.
don't, I don't need to spend that much money on a monitor like that. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I don't know. It's a whole lot of like, hey, look, we're making really cool stuff. Buy our stuff. Buy it. Buy it. Buy it. Get hyped.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm not particularly hyped, to be
Yeah.
completely honest
Yeah.
with you. Oh man, that's basically it from me, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
Um, actually, I kind of did touch on one little thing. It's not really that big of a deal because most people don't even
Mhm.
own it. But the fact that they did announce that there was backwards I feel like it's more of a requirement, honestly, that
Mm.
they announced backwards compatibility for the VR portions of
Mhm.
things. Because if I owned VR for PS4, I would not ever want to buy like another. What is it? It's a large amount of money to get a
Mhm.
VR set for PS4 and then have to buy a new one for PS5. I would lose my mind.
Mhm.
I would be so done.
Yeah,
But
it's PSVR.
It's
Whoops,
like
if I could.
300, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just under $300. It's $250.
I
Depending
mean,
on where you get it at.
that would be a pretty insane thing to do. That'd be almost like Xbox demanding that people buy a new Kinect if they wanted to use it with their Xbox
yeah,
One.
no,
You know, because
exactly,
that
yeah.
would be insane.
Can you see the disappointment in his eyes?
Oh
I
man.
have no idea what they're doing over there.
The judging. One thing I've heard, just like real quick, to give Microsoft some props, and I've been wanting to kind of talk about this, but we'll talk about it at some other point, is the Xbox One's accessibility controller stuff.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
that seems they are not going to make their money back on that, but it's really cool that they
hmm
built that stuff. But yeah, anything else you guys want to talk about?
Not particularly. I think we're good. There wasn't a whole lot of gaming news this week, to be honest.
No.
The lull before E3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, we will end it here, guys, until next week. We want to thank everyone for coming. Reid, I want to thank you for coming, and tell the kind folks where they can find you and what they're going to find when they get there. All the places.
Absolutely. First off, thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast. Appreciate it very, very much. If you like D&D or tabletop RPGs, you can check out my podcast, Sneak Attack Podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, all the places you can get podcasts, Spotify, Pandora even, they do podcasts now. And also I stream on Twitch, which is the platform you're watching this on right now if you're watching live and not on VOD or on the podcast. Sorry, I just realized I alienated your audience.
It's all
But
right. We do it all
if
the time.
if you're on Twitch, you can check me out Wednesdays and Saturdays. Just ReidActually is my handle on Twitch, so check it out. I'm playing God of War right now, and it's one of my favorite games ever.
Oh, man.
Cool. Ryan, what's coming up on your channel?
More Siege mostly. I'm also working on some YouTube content right now. I've also started recently posting on Twitter and Instagram more often. You can find me at renditions on both of them. But yeah, not really a whole large amount. Mostly just like branching out, doing other things. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. Coming up on my channel, I'm taking a quick little break from Enderall. I feel like I'm severely underleveled for a current boss, and it is frustrating the hell out of me. I'll try to get back in Enderall here towards the end of the week. Otherwise, I've been playing some Sandstorm, maybe play some Siege with Ren. Who knows? Maybe. So yeah, that's what's coming up on my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Follow our podcast at NTN Pod on Twitter. You can find Next to Nothing if you guys are watching live and miss something. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and a couple other places. So whatever your favorite podcast platform is, check us out there. If we're not there, send me a message.